Right then, I want you to listen to this very carefully, and I want you to resist the urge to call me a liar before I have finished talking. Because I'm going to tell you something that flies in the face of everything you have read about Ireland in the last 10 years. Every headline about the housing crisis, every article about Dublin, rents that made you want to emigrate to a country with different problems. Every conversation at a family dinner where someone in a good suit explained that property was the only investment worth making and that you had better get on the ladder before the ladder disappeared entirely into the clouds. I'm going to tell you that there are places on this island where a single person, living carefully and not like a fool, can survive for 6 months or more on €10,000, not thrive in the way that a Dublin tech worker understands thriving. And so subscribe and let's start. Place number 5. Ballina, County Mayo. I want to begin with Ballina because it is the place on this list most likely to surprise people who have been paying attention to Mayo for the wrong reasons. Most people who think about Mayo think about Westport. Westport, with its Georgian planned town and its boutiques and its consistent appearances on those magazine lists of nicest places in Ireland. Westport is lovely. Westport is also, by Mayo standards, expensive, and is filling up with remote workers who have discovered it and are paying Dublin prices at a slight discount to feel less guilty about it. Ballina is not Westport. Ballina is better in the specific way that matters for this conversation. Ballina sits on the River Moy in the north of County Mayo, where the river is wide and dark and full of salmon. It is in fact one of the best salmon fishing rivers in Europe. A claim made regularly by locals and not seriously disputed by anyone who has stood on its banks in June and watched the fish move upstream in the early morning light. The town is not small. It has a population of around 10,000 people, which in the context of rural Mayo is substantial. And it has a functioning infrastructure that a person trying to disappear for 6 months would genuinely need. There is a Lidl, there is an Aldi, there is a Super Value, there is a hospital in the form of Mayo University Hospital, which is in Castlebar, 40 minutes away. But Ballina has its own GP practices and a general level of healthcare provision that would not leave you entirely abandoned if something went wrong. There is a railway station connecting the town to Dublin via Manula Junction, which takes approximately 3.5 hours and runs often enough that isolation from the capital is a choice rather than a sentence. The reason Ballina appears on this list is the rent. According to data from Your Overseas Home and multiple property portals, the median property price in Ballina as of 2025 sits at approximately €175,000, making it one of the best value towns in the west of Ireland. But buying is not what we are discussing here. For the purpose of €10,000 in 6 months, we are renting, and in Ballina, a one-bedroom apartment in 2024 and 2025 was available at roughly €800 to €950 per month. A room in a shared house could be found at between €350 and €500 per month, depending on the property and what bills were included. If you are the kind of person who can live with other humans without losing your composure, a room in Ballina at €400 per month is not an unreasonable target. Let us build the budget. 6 months of accommodation at €450 per month. Generous, covering you for a decent room with utilities included, which is common in the shared rental market. Gives you €2,700 for housing across the 6-month period. Groceries for one person. Shopping at Lidl or Aldi, which are both present in Ballina and which offer genuine value if you cook rather than eating your way through the town's restaurants, will cost you roughly €220 to €250 per month in an Irish rural town in 2025. That is €1,320 to €1,500 for 6 months of food, assuming no extravagance but also no misery. You eat real meals. You have tea whenever you want it. You occasionally buy a bottle of something. Transport in Ballina without a car requires either a bicycle, which will cost you between €80 and €150 second-hand, or a willingness to walk, which costs nothing and is made considerably more pleasant by the fact that Ballina is a town with actual footpaths and a river running through it. Utilities, if not included in rent, electricity, heating, and internet. in a rural Irish property will run approximately 120 to 180 euros a month. Miscellaneous costs: a haircut once, a visit to the GP once, a pint or two on a Friday evening, the odd bus to Castlebar or Westport for a change of scenery. Add perhaps 100 euros a month. The total, worked conservatively: 2,700 euros accommodation, 1,500 euros food, 720 euros utilities if needed, and 600 euros miscellaneous, and 150 euros transport setup, including the bicycle. That is 5,670 euros for 6 months. 5,670 euros against a budget of 10,000. You have 4,330 euros remaining. That is not a margin so thin you would have to count every packet of biscuits. That is a real buffer, enough to absorb an unexpected cost. If something happened, or simply enough to allow you to exist, with the knowledge that you are not perpetually one bad week from disaster. What is life actually like in Ballina for someone who has come to disappear? The town has a character that is not immediately legible from the outside. It has several good pubs, a few of which have genuine traditional music sessions on weekend evenings, without needing to advertise the fact on a laminated card outside the door. The Moy is simply there, always, available for walking or sitting by, and the Atlantic coast at Enniscrone and Killala Bay is a 30-minute drive through countryside that, in the right light, is quietly devastating. Enniscrone itself has one of the best seaweed baths in Ireland, a Victorian bathhouse where you sit in a deep cast iron tub filled with hot seawater and harvested Atlantic seaweed, a tradition that has been going since 1912 and that costs a modest amount and does something irreplaceable for a body that has been sitting at a desk too long. The town has a market. It has a library, which is free, which matters when you're living on 10,000 euros, and the evenings are long and dark, and the rain is doing what the rain in North Mayo does from October onward, which is to arrive horizontally and with intent. The nearest cinema is in Castlebar, 40 minutes away, which is far enough that a film becomes an occasion rather than a habit, and you watch it with more attention than you would in a city where there is always another one starting in an hour. There is no pretension to Ballina. It is a working Irish town that has been there since before Ireland was a tourist destination and will be there long after the boutique hotel trend has passed. For a person who wants to think or write or simply recover from whatever it was that drove them to look up how to live on 10,000 euros in rural Ireland, it is an entirely plausible and, I would argue, an actively good choice. Place number 4. Carrickmacross, County Monaghan. Monaghan, as I have said before on this channel, and will say again because it bears repeating, is Ireland's best kept secret, and Carrickmacross is the most liveable expression of that secret. It sits in the south of the county, closer to the Dublin border than most Monaghan towns, and this proximity has historically given it a slightly more prosperous feel than the remote northwest of the county. There is more retail, more employment, more of the middle-class infrastructure that makes a town feel like somewhere rather than merely somewhere rural. The lace first. Carrickmacross lace is one of the finest textile traditions in Ireland, dating to the 1830s. And it has been worn at royal weddings and featured in major fashion houses, and is still made by hand in the town, by people who learned it from people who learned it from people who learned it from the beginning. This is the context. You are not moving to a forgettable place. You are moving to a town with genuine craft heritage, a tight and active community, and a Tuesday morning quality of life that Dublin does not know exists. The rental market in Carrickmacross is, by national standards, extraordinarily reasonable. Monaghan is a county ranked 5th most affordable in Ireland in the Chill Insurance 2024 analysis, with an average house price of €225,000. In the rental market, the county's average monthly rent, as reported by daft.ie data, sat among the cheapest in Ireland, with Monaghan included in the group of counties, alongside Leitrim, Donegal, Sligo, Mohill and Mayo, with average rents ranging from €1,185 to €1,338 for all residential property types. But a single room or a modest one-bedroom in a town like Carrickmacross can be found considerably below those averages. Rooms in shared houses in Monaghan town and Carrickmacross appear regularly at €350 to €450 per month, often with bills partially or fully included. A small one-bedroom apartment in or around the town centre lists, in 2024 and 2025 data, at approximately €800 to €900 per month. Let us apply the €10,000 calculation to Carrickmacross. 6 months of a shared room with bills included at €400 per month, €2,400. Food at the Lidl, which is present in the town, or at the SuperValu, which is also there, €220 a month. €1,320 for 6 months. Transport. Carrickmacross is close enough to Dublin that a bus Iran service runs to the capital regularly, and the town itself is small enough to navigate on foot. A second-hand bicycle at €100 handles any errand within the town boundary. Miscellaneous living costs, healthcare, personal care, the occasional social occasion, a book from a charity shop, a pint in one of the town's established pubs, roughly €110 per month, €660 for 6 months. Total, approximately €4,480 for 6 months of genuine, functional life in a beautiful Irish market town. Against €10,000, that leaves €5,520 unspent. That is an extraordinary margin. The quality of life in Carrickmacross is not a consolation prize. The town has a small but real arts culture. The Lace School still operates, and occasional exhibitions and craft events run through the year with a consistency that tells you the community supports them, rather than merely tolerating them. There is Lough Mucknow nearby, a large drumlin lake ideal for walking, angling and kayaking, where the mornings in autumn are the kind of thing that makes you feel you have been given something for free. The surrounding South Monaghan countryside is gentle and green and private in a way that the windswept western counties are not. It is the kind of landscape you walk through on an autumn afternoon and feel, for reasons you cannot immediately articulate, that you are somewhere that has been lived in and cared for over a very long time. The proximity to the border adds a practical dimension that is easy to overlook. Newry in Northern Ireland, 40 minutes north, has shopping and services at a different price point, and for a person living carefully on a budget, the option to occasionally cross into Northern Ireland for particular purchases is not nothing. The GAA community is active, and the pubs are real pubs, where a person sitting alone at the bar reading a book is not a curiosity, but simply a person reading a book at the bar. The people, as they tend to be in Irish border counties, have a pragmatism and a dry humour that comes from centuries of knowing that the world is complicated and that getting on with it is the only sensible response. A person who wants to disappear in Carrickmacross will find that they are not so much invisible as simply unremarkable, which is better. Nobody asks too many questions in Monaghan. It is not that kind of county, and for our purposes, that is entirely the point. Place number 3, Ballinamore, County Leitrim. As if you want to disappear in Ireland. Truly, genuinely, quietly disappear in a way that involves waking up in the morning with no particular agenda and a river nearby, and the sound of nobody in particular doing anything much at high volume. Then Leitrim is where you're going. And within Leitrim, Ballinamore is the option I want to put to you. Because it combines genuine affordability with a character and a setting that most people who recommend Carrick-on-Shannon to the exclusion of everything else in the county have never bothered to investigate. Ballinamore is a small market town in South Leitrim with a population of around 1,200 people, which means it is large enough to have a pub, a pharmacy, a post office, a supermarket, and a functioning GP practice, and small enough that after 3 weeks you will know who owns what car and which pub serves the better pint. The Ballinamore and Ballyconnell Canal, part of the Shannon-Erne waterway, passes through the town, and the greenway along its bank is the kind of walking and cycling route that in a more famous county would be the subject of significant tourism literature and a branded festival and a podcast. Here, it is simply where people go for a walk in the evening, and in the absence of branding around it is among its finest qualities. The Sliabh and Urain mountains are visible from the Toink on a clear day, a dark ridge to the northwest that catches the last light in late afternoon in a way that painters and photographers notice, but that the rest of the population has largely stopped remarking on, because it happens every day and familiarity is the great equalizer. Loughrin, with its castle and its hotel and its estate grounds open to walkers, is a short drive to the east. The broader Leitrim countryside, with its complicated lakes and its sodden bogland and its complete indifference to whether you are there or not, surrounds the town in every direction and provides the kind of landscape that people who have lived in cities too long find simultaneously alienating and profoundly restoring, usually in that order. Leitrim, as established in the previous video on this channel, is the cheapest county in Ireland for house prices and among the cheapest for rental costs. According to Statista's analysis of daft.ie data, for the second quarter of 2024, Leitrim had the lowest average monthly rent of any county in Ireland at €1,139 across all property types. But in a small town like Ballinamore, rather than the county town of Carrick-on-Shannon, the figures fall further. At properties listed on rent.ie and property.ie in Ballinamore and its immediate surrounding area in 2024 and 2025 showed a range from fully furnished two-bedroom cottages in the countryside at €500 to €600 per month to rooms in shared houses in or near the town at between €350 and €450. The rent.ie listings for Leitrim showed stone cottages in rural locations, genuinely habitable, genuinely furnished, not derelict and requiring Wellingtons to enter, at figures that, if you told someone in Dublin, they would assume you had misread the listing. The €10,000 calculation for Ballinamore requires clarity about one thing. If you are renting a rural cottage in the Leitrim countryside rather than a room in a shared house, you will need a car, or at the absolute minimum, a reliable bicycle, and the physical disposition to use it. Let us work the budget both ways. Option 1. A room in a shared house in or near Ballinamore town at €380 a month with bills included, €2,280 for 6 months. Food at €200 per month for a careful single person. Leitrim's rural grocery prices are genuinely lower than urban equivalents, and Lidl reaches even the smaller towns through the regional road network. €1,200 for 6 months. Now, transport as a bicycle user within the town, an occasional bus Ariane service to Carrick-on-Shannon or Longford for larger shopping, €120 over 6 months, including the second-hand bicycle. Miscellaneous costs at €90 per month for 6 months, €540. Total, €4,140, against €10,000, that is €5,860 remaining. Option 2. In a rural cottage in the Leitrim countryside at €550 per month, €3,300 for accommodation. Add a second-hand car at €1,200, insurance at approximately €400 for 6 months on a budget policy, and fuel at a modest rate for a person who does not commute but simply drives to the shop and to town twice a week, approximately €300 in fuel over 6 months. In food at €200 a month, €1,200, miscellaneous at €90 per month, €540, total €7,040, against €10,000, that leaves €2,960. A thinner margin, but still functional, and what you get for it is a stone cottage on a Leitrim lane with a fire, a view of the mountains, a canal visible from the end of the road, and the absolute certainty that no commuter is going to knock on your door at 7 in the morning to ask you about a planning application. The question people always ask about Leitrim is what you do there. The answer, which frustrates people who need the question answered at pace, is this: you do what you need to do. You walk, you read, you think. You sit with the discomfort of having no scheduled agenda for the first time in years, by your boss, and then you sit with the discovery that the discomfort passes. You go to the pub on Saturday and talk to someone who has lived in the same townland since 1968 and has opinions about things you have not considered. You fish, if you fish. You cycle the greenway. You drive to Carrick-on-Shannon when Ballinamore feels small, and you drive back when Carrick-on-Shannon feels too busy. Which it will feel after approximately 40 minutes, because the 2-hour drive to Dublin has conditioned you to believe that any town with a marina is a city. Leitrim rewards people who have come to slow down. It has nothing to offer people who have come to speed up, and it makes no apology for this, which is one of its finer qualities. Before we get to the final two on this list, the two places where the €10,000 calculation becomes almost embarrassingly comfortable, I want to say something that is not about property. Subscribe to this channel, not because I'm asking you nicely, though I am asking you nicely. Subscribe because if you are the kind of person who has watched this far into a video about living on €10,000 in rural Ireland, you are the kind of person these videos are made for. And more of this content exists and will continue to exist if you tell the algorithm that it should. Subscribe to demonstrate that this is useful. Subscribe to prove that information like this, honest, researched, free of the kind of breathless optimism that marks most personal finance content. Place number 2, Mohill, County Leitrim. I am going back to Leitrim for the second time on this list, and I make no apology for it. Leitrim is the most consistently affordable county in Ireland, and it contains multitudes, by which I mean it contains a collection of small towns and villages that differ substantially from one another in character and setting, and that cannot all be collapsed into a single entry. Ballinamore gives you the canal and the mountains. Mohill gives you something different. A small, settled, ancient Irish market town with a literary heritage that most people have never been told about. Big set in the quiet south-central part of the county near Lough Rinn, with a cost of living so low that it genuinely begins to feel like someone made a mistake. Mohill's population is approximately 1,000 people. It is a town that has existed in one form or another since medieval times. It was a stronghold of the O'Rourke chieftains, the ruling family of the Kingdom of West Bryfna that dominated this part of Ulster and Connaught for centuries. And there is a history embedded in the landscape around it that nobody has yet managed to package attractively enough to sell to tourists, which means it is still simply there, unlabelled and free. Turlough O'Carolan, the blind harpist and composer, who is often described as the last of the great Irish bards, was buried in the nearby parish of Kilronan in 1738 after a life spent travelling the houses of Irish aristocracy and composing music that has outlasted every political and cultural upheaval since. The Arigner mining experience, one of the best heritage sites in Ireland, is within comfortable driving distance to the northwest. Lough Rinn Castle, hotel and estate, with its formal gardens and its Victorian architecture, sits a few kilometres to the east and provides, on a weekday morning when the tour buses have not yet arrived, the kind of atmospheric walkabout that costs nothing but the petrol to get there. The rental market in Mohill is, frankly, startling. Cottages in the immediate rural hinterland of the town have appeared on rent.ie at €350 to €450 per month in 2024, furnished with small gardens and oil-fired heating and the kind of structural solidity that Irish rural properties built before 1970 regularly have. A room in the town itself. There is shared accommodation available in Mohill, as in most Irish market towns, can be had at €300 to €380 per month. These are not figures that have been inflated by demand from the tech industry, or by the proximity of a major university, or by the discovery of the town, by people from another country looking for something authentic. They are figures that reflect the simple fact that Mohill is a small Irish market town in a county that nobody in property investment is watching closely, and that the people who live there have wages that make those rents the appropriate local market rate. With 6 months in Mohill on €10,000, worked carefully. A furnished rural cottage at €400 a month, €2,400 for 6 months. A second-hand car because rural Mohill requires one and there is no practical alternative. €1,000 for the car, €360 for insurance, €240 for fuel over 6 months for a person who drives to the shop and to Carrick-on-Shannon and no further. Then see yours. Food at €190 per month. Mohill has a local super value, and the nearest Lidl is in Carrick-on-Shannon. 20 minutes away, perfectly accessible for the weekly shop, €1,140. Utilities if not included in the cottage rental. The oil-fired central heating in rural Leitrim is the single most significant variable cost for anyone spending a winter in the county. And 6 months of heating oil for a small cottage will run somewhere between €300 and €450, depending on how cold it gets and how frugal you are with the thermostat. Add electricity at approximately €70 a month and broadband at €35, and you are looking at €480 for electricity and broadband over 6 months, plus €375 in heating oil at a midpoint estimate. Miscellaneous at €80 per month, €480. Total, 2,400 accommodation, €1,600. Transport, including car, €1,140 food, €855 utilities and heating, €480 miscellaneous. That is €6,475 for 6 months of comfortable, quiet, genuinely livable existence in rural County Leitrim. Against €10,000, you have €3,525 remaining. €3,500. That is not a margin. That is a reserve. That is enough to buy a chest of drawers, repair the car if something minor goes wrong, fly home for Christmas and back, and still have money left over for the kind of small, occasional pleasure that makes the difference between surviving somewhere and actually enjoying it. What do you do in Mohill? You do what the town has always rewarded. You slow down. You drive the 15 minutes to Lough Rinn and walk the estate roads through the forest in October, when the leaves are doing what Irish leaves do in October, which is to say they are spectacular and cold and completely indifferent to your admiration. You drive to Drumshanbo, 20 minutes north, where the Shed Distillery produces Drumshanbo gunpowder Irish gin in a Victorian glasshouse and does tours and tastings that cost a modest entrance fee and leave you with a much better understanding of how botanicals work and a much stronger conviction that gin is an underrated contribution to civilization. You sit in one of Mohill's pubs, which have the quality common to all good Irish rural pubs of being indifferent to whether you stay for 1 drink or 4, and of having staff who treat the regulars like human beings rather than revenue units. You drive in the evenings to the edge of Lough Allen and watch the weather come off the mountains, which in Leitrim in autumn is its own form of entertainment. You visit the Arigna mining experience once, and then again, because the second time you listen more carefully to what the guides are telling you and you understand more of it. You read considerably. You cook because eating out every day is not the budget we are working with. You walk the lanes. You find the O'Carolan grave at Kilronan and stand there for a while, thinking about what it means to have composed music in the 1700s that is still being played in the 21st century, and whether that is a better legacy than a pension. You will hear things in the pubs of Mohill that you will not hear anywhere else in Ireland. This is either a recommendation or a warning, depending on who you are, and I offer it as both simultaneously. Place number 1. Drumshanbo, County Leitrim. Here is the town. Here is the place I would send you if I could send you anywhere on this island with €10,000 and 6 months, and the honest intention of disappearing. Drumshanbo, population approximately 900 people. Situated at the southern tip of Lough Allen, the largest lake in County Leitrim, in the shadow of the Arigna Mountains to the east and the broader Leitrim uplands to the west, at the northern end of the Shannon navigation that connects the lakes and rivers of the west of Ireland in a single system of water that has been the main artery of this part of the country since before the roads existed. Drumshanbo is not a town that announces itself. You do not come to Drumshanbo because it has been recommended to you by a travel supplement, or because a celebrity chef posted a photograph of something they ate there. You come because someone who knows Leitrim mentioned it quietly, or because you were driving the road from Carrick-on-Shannon to Manorhamilton, and you turned off by accident and found yourself at the edge of Lough Allen at 8 in the morning with the mountains coming out of the mist, and the water perfectly still, and the air smelling of peat and cold, and the particular freshness that only exists at the edge of a large body of water in the west of Ireland. And you thought, with a clarity that felt unusual and possibly significant, that this was a place you could stay. The Shed Distillery of Drumshanbo, producers of Drumshanbo gunpowder Irish gin, and Drumshanbo single pot still Irish whiskey, is the town's most visible ambassador to the outside world, and it has done more to put the place on the map than any tourism campaign. But it has done so without overwhelming what the town fundamentally is, which is a quiet, ancient, and water-adjacent Irish settlement that has been getting on with things at its own pace for a very long time, and has no particular interest in being discovered at scale. The Arena mining experience is 8 kilometres to the east, in the valley that runs between the Arena Mountains and the Leitrim Hills, in where coal was extracted for over 2 centuries and where the last mine closed in 1990. A fact that the visitor centre does not hide, and that gives the experience a weight and an honesty uncommon in Irish heritage tourism. Former miners guide you through the tunnels and tell you what it was actually like, in language that does not simplify or sentimentalize. Adezoas, Apadislas, and the contrast between those dark low passages and the sky over Lough Allen when you come back out into the air is one of the most effective pieces of unintentional theatre in Ireland. The Sliabh and Yeren Visitor Centre in Drumshanbo itself provides context for the mountain range that sits above the town. Walks, wildlife, cultural history, the kind of slow tourism that suits a town of this size and temperament. The rental market in Drumshanbo and its immediate rural surroundings sits at the very floor of the Irish property market. Small 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom cottages and houses in the Drumshanbo area appear in the Leitrim rental listings at €350 to €500 per month. These are not student flats above a chip shop. These are the kind of solid, stone-built or mid-century bungalow rural Irish properties that have oil-fired heating, a small garden or a yard, and a view of either the mountain or the lake depending on which road you take out of the town. And broadband. Rural broadband in Leitrim has been a county council priority for years, and the coverage in the Drumshanbo area is generally serviceable. A room in a shared house in the town itself, where the rental market is thin because the population is small, will cost €300 to €400 per month when one becomes available. The 6-month budget for Drumshanbo. A small cottage in the immediate area at €400 per month, €2,400. A second-hand car at €900, you need one. This is non-negotiable in a town of 900 people, unless you have come to Drumshanbo having already made peace with a particular kind of austerity. Insurance at €320 for 6 months, with fuel at €200 for a person who drives to the shop in Carrick-on-Shannon once a week and nowhere else except Lough Allen, €2,420 for transport, including car. Food at €180 per month, recognising that Drumshanbo is small and the weekly Lidl run to Carrick is part of the rhythm of life, and the costs there are as low as they get in Ireland, €1,080 for 6 months. Heating oil for a rural Leitrim cottage in autumn and winter, budgeted at €350 for the period, electricity at €65 per month, and broadband at €35 per month, €830 for utilities over 6 months, miscellaneous at €75 per month, €450, total, €2,400 accommodation, €2,420 transport, €1,080 food, the €830 utilities, €450 miscellaneous, €6,180 for 6 months of life in one of the quietest and most beautiful small towns in Ireland, against €10,000, that is €3,820 unspent, nearly €4,000 in reserve, which in a town with no cinema, no expensive bars, no pressure of any kind to spend money on the performance of a lifestyle, and is enough to last you considerably longer than you planned if you decide somewhere around month 3 that leaving is not something you're in any hurry to do. I want to address the question of what €10,000 and 6 months in Drumshanbo actually gives you, not in financial terms but in experiential ones, because this is the question that the budget cannot answer. See, it gives you Lough Allen on a November morning when the mountains are white at the top and the water is the colour of pewter and there is nobody else on the lake road for as far as you can see. It gives you the evenings in a cottage with the fire on and the rain on the windows, which in Leitrim happens with a frequency that you either make peace with immediately or spend the winter resenting, and I recommend making peace. It gives you the people of Drumshanbo, as canopad parabius ba true, who are among the most reliably interesting and straight-talking people in Ireland, in a way that I believe comes from living at a remove from the self-consciousness that afflicts the towns and suburbs closer to Dublin. It gives you access to the Shannon-Erne waterway, which, if you have a bicycle and the inclination, runs for 63 kilometres and is free. It gives you the distillery, though, which does tours and occasionally has events and is a legitimate source of community life in a town that does not otherwise rely on attractions for its social architecture. It gives you the mountains. It gives you the lake. It gives you the extraordinary, irreplaceable, completely underrated gift of a place where time moves at the correct speed rather than at the speed the economy requires. 10,000 euros, 6 months, 5 Irish places where that arithmetic works. Ballina in Mayo, then where the salmon run in the Moy and the Atlantic coast is 30 minutes away, and the seaweed baths at Enniscrone have been restoring people since 1912, and the rental market is among the most reasonable in the West. Carrickmacross in Monaghan, where the lace tradition and the drumlin landscape and the border pragmatism combine into a town of surprising density and character for its size, and where nobody asks too many questions because that is simply not the way things are done. Ballinamore in Leitrim, where the canal greenway runs along the edge of the town and the countryside is the kind you walk into when you need to stop thinking about everything that made you want to disappear in the first place, and where the rent for a stone cottage is a figure that, if stated in a Dublin conversation, would be assumed to be a typo. Mohill in Leitrim, a small and ancient and saturated in music and history, and the particular quiet that comes from a town that has been minding its own business since the O'Rourke's were in charge and has not been distracted from that task since. And Drumshanbo at the edge of Lough Allen, where you will find what I believe is the best 10,000 euro proposition in Ireland. The longest silence, the lowest cost, the greatest amount of unstructured natural space. See, and the most honest relationship between what a place charges you and what it gives you in return. None of these places will make you feel that you are roughing it. None of them will require you to pretend that austerity is a lifestyle choice rather than a mathematical reality. They are simply places in Ireland where 10,000 euros is enough, where the island shows you what it actually is when it is not performing for the people who can afford the performance, and where disappearing for a while or for considerably longer if the arithmetic turns out to suit you is a reasonable and a genuinely available thing to do. The budget exists, the places exist, the silence exists, more of it than you probably expect, and more of it than you will know what to do with until the 3rd or 4th week, when you will begin to understand what it is actually for. That is all from me. I am your Irish grandpa. See you in the next one.